Welcome to Unit 9, topic 9.7. We're at the end of this journey. This is 9.7, resistance to globalization. So these are responses to globalization with an emphasis on the negative consequences in which certain groups started to resist globalization. You could look at the positive and the negative globalization, and then with complexity, you can look at how it benefits some groups and other groups suffer from the limitations, and it's very complex within the groups, within geographic locations, right? Well, now some of those groups start to resist globalization. Let's take a look. So what were the various responses to globalization from 1900 to the present? Responses to rising cultural, economic, social globalization took a variety of forms. Clue. Let's look at some of the positives and negatives. So the positives of globalization. Well, they introduced new cultures, they integrated cultures, global trade, increased wealth accumulation for some groups. What are the negatives? Well, they only make some wealthy, as I just said. Some put profits, especially companies, multinational corporations, they put the profits above the safety and labor conditions of the workers, right? Who has resisted globalization? The main political entities, Saudi Arabia, China, North Korea. China and North Korea because of their political ideology, Saudi Arabia more of a cultural, religious conservatism type ideology, right? Well, the roots of globalization and anti-globalization, right? So globalization has affected the relationships among countries. We know this. Several organizations contributed to the growth of a global economy, and we know some, if not many, if not all of these, all right? And they're highlighted right there. And they're the major contributors. So each one of those institutions are made up of multiple countries who make alliances and economic agreements in order to promote globalization. So why resist globalization? So there are many reasons why you would resist globalization. The first reason are the many who buy things online, all of us, have no idea the conditions of the workers. So if you look to the left, this is a secondary thing here that we don't realize. Child labor in West Africa, especially with the chocolate industry. Example number 2, Amazon's warehouse workers. They described intense pressure to fulfill orders in time or they would be fired. And this really happened during the global pandemic where more people are buying online than ever before. Example number 3 is the Rana Plaza factory in 2013. Look at the bottom left. The collapse of the whole factory killed over 1,000 people in Bangladesh. Okay, the company that owned that factory building did not pay to support the infrastructure of that building. So now you can see major examples. Reason number 2, environmental damage. All right, this is fuel involved to ship products. It increased. And what do you need to do? You're burning greenhouse gases in the environment. So Brazil cut down thousands of square miles of rainforest each year. Some have tried to combat globalization by developing ecotourism industries. A lot of them in Central America and in South America, okay? And they make profits while showing off the country's natural resources. Really cool adventure tours. I've been on a few in Costa Rica. I've been all over the country. Reason number 3, threats to national security and the sovereignty of a nation, the ability for a nation to govern itself without these international conglomerates, okay? So conservatives distrust globalization because they support sovereignty. Here's an example, Brexit, right? British voters wanting to leave the European Union and its 28 countries. Why? Well, they believed the argument for the people of Britain that wanted to leave the European Union. The European Union interfered with Britain's right to govern itself, its sovereignty. And many argue that the European Union required Britain to accept way too many immigrants, and the percentage of money they would provide for humanitarian efforts, economic support for the other countries was more than the other European countries because their economy was stronger. All right, so many people felt that's unfair. Let us be our own country by ourselves and rule ourselves. All these agreements actually provides too many limitations for our country, so we're out. And they're officially out of the European Union, okay? The last reason, economic resistance. Some believe globalization, the international agreements and institutions, it can destroy small businesses. So small businesses, they can't cross state lines or national borders. They can't extract natural resources. They need to use a wide variety of labor sources. So many distrust the World Bank because some say the richer nations, it favors the richer nations over the poorer nations. It favors the multinational corporations over the small businesses, the mom and pop shops, many that you would see in our own town on Washington Street, right? Some say the world's richest countries control the bank, all right? What measures do anti-globalists favor? These people who are against globalism, well, they favor human rights, they favor fair trade, they favor sustainable development, and they favor debt relief or restructuring. They want reforms. Economic reforms that trickle down into the social and cultural aspects of our lives, and especially countries that suffered from imperialism through colonialism and that sort of ideology throughout history. So anti-globalization and social media has played a huge role in this. So activists have been using the internet to spread their message for some time now. In 2009, there were riots in China, and they were blamed on social media like Twitter and Facebook. So what does the government do in China? They made their own substitute social media platform called Weibo, and they have total control of it. It blocks sensitive content, all right? The Battle of Seattle. So in 1999, protesters in Seattle, in the United States of America, they protested at a World Trade Organization conference in Seattle, and they shut it down. They shut down the meeting. They battled with police. It was a major protest, but over social media, the influence spread to other anti-globalist groups around the world, all right? So this started a major anti-globalist movement through social media in 1999. And it's one of the first movements to be coordinated through the internet. Here's your prompt, people. Evaluate to the extent in which responses to globalization varied from 1900 to the present. Let's see if we can do this in 13 minutes. Short notes for yourself. Ready, go. Document 1. It's the negative effects of consumerism and materialism. It's sales worship with religious fervor. Religious fervor is a reflection of the Renaissance paintings here, where they always had weeping women over the cross of Jesus Christ, and they replaced that with the sale ends today to show that not only are people supporting globalization, but they're starting to worship it at a level to a great extent, and there could be negative effects of that, right? All right, so that's what that really is. Look at the next one. Whoops. The WTO protest. Go to that one. Okay. I didn't even put an explanation here because this is the explanation in itself, right? These are physical protests. Physical protests. And physical protests lead to change, right? So these are physical protests of the negative impact. What's the negative impact? That's why you're writing things. WTO destroys forests. And that's what they're trying to say. Globalization leads to deforestation. And they're protesting because of that, right? So the first one is in, the first one's in Britain. The second one's in Seattle in the United States. And everyone go to the last one, document 3. All right, so you got the planet Earth and then denote the world economy. So that globe is really the world economy. And the mountain is globalization, and there's a ledge, and it's walking the ledge blindfolded.
I thought he was just like sweaty.
You get blindfold. It's a blindfold. So now if it's blindfolded, the world economy is blindfolded. So there's no one leading the world economy. Why is there no one leading the world economy? Because there's no world leader. Were you going to say that, Jeremy? No one is in control of the global economy. Excellent. Why? Because countries believe in the sovereignty of their own nation. So there is no entity that controls the world economy. Supply and demand and free market trade controls it. So some people believe that there are major negative impacts because nobody knows the direction the economy will go. Yes? Because there are groups that experience benefits. So you can, yes, you can definitely show limitation on this. This only reveals the negative perspective, right? So look, the sovereignty of nations, no one in charge of the global economy, no one guiding the global economy. The global economy is walking blind at the edge of a cliff. This reflects the dangers of globalization. Yes?
Like, it seems to not actually have a goal in mind. It's just constantly climbing the cliff.
Yes, but if you're standing blindfolded at the edge of the cliff, what is the one word that everyone would say to you? Danger, right? Because you're blindfolded. You don't know that you're at the edge of a cliff. You're blinded at the edge of a cliff.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
Look, edge of a cliff, blindfolded. Dangerous. That's so dangerous. You're going to blindfold yourself and watch that. What's that movie? Is it called Solo, where the guy like blindfolds himself and then he has... Was it not Free Solo? The guy that walked from the old World Trade Center from one side to the other. And he like blindfolds himself with no parachute. Yeah, he really did it. Blindfolded.
Oh, yeah. There was that little kid.
Yeah, you watch it and you're like this because this guy falls, he dies, you know? So look at this. If the world economy falls, then you're going to get another Great Depression. And that's like the argument here. If no one's in control of the world economy, another Great Depression, and we all remember what that was like, right? So that's the argument here. Let's take a look. Everybody, exactly, right? What happens with how governments reacted and the walk. Yeah. Okay. Everybody look at the thesis and compare yours to mine. Let's read mine. Here we go. Responses to globalization vary to a great extent during the 20th century. I really need some of you to go back with me and listen. Evaluate to the extent in which responses to globalization varied. Did they vary a lot or a little? Responses to globalization varied a lot to a great extent during the 20th century. That is a viable thesis right there. You know what I mean? That's the claim. Now let's validate it to make it a viable thesis. Watch what I do here. The reason for this is because document 1 shows groups in Great Britain using art to portray consumerism in a negative light. Document 2 reveals groups in Seattle using physical protests to oppose the negative impact of globalization on the environment, right? Causes, you know. And then document 3 reveals how Costa Rican groups use political cartoons to reveal the economic uncertainty and risks of globalization. That's it.